While tidying the bedroom of the guy I liked, I accidentally knocked over the trash can. A sticky used condom half-wrapped in tissue rolled out. It looked recent, maybe from last night, maybe this morning. I couldn't even name the swirl of emotions that hit me in that moment. My mother called just as I was helping Caleb tidy his bedroom. Since last month, when Caleb had given me a spare key to his place, I had been coming over almost every day. Although he hadn't officially said anything, it felt like we had reached an unspoken understanding about our relationship. After the usual questions about my life, my mother casually dropped a name. Serafina is back. The hand wiping the bedside table froze mid-air. My heart hammered against my ribs. In a flash, I hit the speakerphone button off. I risked a glance through the slightly ajar door. Caleb was on the sofa, engrossed in his phone, his face its usual calm, impassive mask. Unperturbed. He shouldn't have heard, I thought. Relieved, I lowered my voice to my mother. Didn't she say she was getting married next month? Why is she back so suddenly? You didn't know? My mother sounded hesitant on the other end, as if holding back. Finally, with a sigh, she told me Serafina's fiancé had cheated, caught red-handed right before the wedding. The wedding was off. Those simple sentences were enough to completely unnerve me. Serafina was my cousin, only a few months older than me. We grew up together, and it hurt to hear she was going through such a terrible experience. But another feeling, cold and sharp, pierced through. Serafina had been the only girlfriend Caleb ever publicly acknowledged in college. At that time, I was merely a classmate he was slightly closer to. When I learned they were dating, I deliberately kept my distance from them. Yet, whenever we met at family gatherings, Serafina would steer the conversation back to Caleb. She'd often say how grateful she was to me for introducing her to such a wonderful person like him. It took me a while to understand that she had seen my feelings for Caleb all along and was perhaps using that awkward way to make me face the reality. This strange dynamic continued until graduation. They broke up. Because of differing plans for the future, Serafina decided to go abroad for further study, steeling herself to end things with Caleb. Caleb was heartbroken for a long time. I was there for him during that period, watching him struggle, seeing him slowly piece himself back together after getting drunk repeatedly. Perhaps that shared time, that quiet support, had carved out a small different space for me in his heart compared to others. My mother's voice grew louder, narrating the scandalous details of Serafina's fiancé's infidelity. Afraid Caleb might overhear, I glanced through the door again. Caleb was now playing with Pipkin, the ragdoll cat. Head bent, his long fingers traced the cat's spine, grooming him slowly. His profile was striking, from his sharp jawline to the elegant curve of his neck, yet his face remained expressionless. Pipkin lay curled beside him, eyes half closed in lazy contentment, clearly enjoying the attention. This 8-month-old cat was the gift I'd given Caleb 6 months ago, finally mustering the courage to confess my feelings after hearing about Serafina's engagement. He accepted Pipkin and named him on the spot. Pipkin, he said, because he was soft and small just like me. The rare tenderness in his eyes, the faint smile that touched his lips, had solidified my resolve to speak my heart. But sensing my impending confession, Caleb had suddenly turned away, his voice low and slightly strained. Alara, can you wait a little longer? My heart plummeted. Perhaps that was the moment I truly understood. Even with Serafina engaged, seemingly happy and close to marriage, Caleb was willing to wait for her, just as I had been waiting for him. Alara. My mother's voice yanked me back to the present. I steadied myself. I replied automatically, my eyes still fixed on Caleb in the living room. He seemed to be on another call now, the same faint smile playing on his lips. A sharp pang of dread, a fierce sense of impending crisis, twisted in my gut. Then his lips moved, and I heard a name whispered. Serafina. My mother's voice faded into the background chatter. I was just staring blankly, a dull ache starting behind my eyes, my palms turning cold. Suddenly, Pipkin darted into the bedroom, tripping the bedside trash can. As I reached to right it, a discarded wrapper tumbled out, and with it that sticky bundle again, half wrapped in tissue, looking too recent. A sickening certainty washed over me. The shock was paralyzing, a bizarre numbness allowing me to mechanically grab tissues from the bedside table and drop the evidence back into the can. My mother's voice crackled from the phone. Oh, I meant to ask, Your aunt said Serafina needed a change of scenery and flew out to you yesterday. She should have arrived last night. Didn't she contact you? In that instant it clicked. Last night I called Caleb over a dozen times. No answer. He hadn't offered a single word of explanation today. Everything was sickeningly clear. Serafina hadn't contacted me last night. She'd contacted Caleb. I don't know how I ended the call, how I managed to walk out of that bedroom. My eyes met Caleb's in the living room. I paused, the questions burning on my tongue. But before I could voice them, he was already ushering me out. I have something to do shortly, Alara. You should go now. The unconscious coldness in his tone felt like a physical blow, squeezing the air from my lungs. I looked down, my fingers digging hard into my palms. 6 months ago, after my failed confession, I'd curled up in bed, pulling the covers over my head, telling myself over and over that I had to let go. When I woke up, I returned to my routine work and life, but I stopped seeking him out. Then 2 months ago, I'd almost gotten lost on a mountain trail. Finding me, Caleb had held me tightly. For the first time, his breath was hot against my neck, and he called my name urgently. Alara, Alara. I felt his genuine fear, the slight trembling in his body. After that, our relationship had accelerated dramatically. He'd even given me a spare key to his place. I truly believed this time, my long-held wish would finally come true. I hadn't counted on Serafina's breakup. The one whose wish was coming true was Caleb. Now, Caleb was retreating, putting that familiar distance between us. It was as if the warmth and intimacy of the past 2 months had been nothing but my own hopeful delusion. The click of the lock turning echoed from the front door. Serafina stood there, her expression a complex mix of awkwardness, guilt, and a touch of pity. Seeing me, then glancing at Caleb, she hesitated for just a second before rushing to explain. She'd arrived late last night, she said, and Caleb had kindly offered her a place to stay. She was back now to retrieve something she'd left in the guest room. She distinctly emphasized the words guest room. After a beat, Caleb replied, "All right, I'll get it for you." I listened to their clumsy performance, forcing a stiff smile. My gaze fell on the keys in Serafina's hand. A familiar set. My head spun. Even this symbol of closeness, I wasn't the only one. Caleb reappeared shortly with a small bag. As Serafina reached for it, he suddenly took her wrist in his hand. Didn't the doctor say it was minor? Why hasn't the rash cleared up yet? His brow was furrowed with concern, his voice incredibly gentle. This soft, attentive tenderness was something Caleb had never shown me, not even during our closest moments over the past 2 months. Serafina's wrist was pale, marked by faint red bumps, almost invisible, but his gaze was fixed on it. She quirked an eyebrow, smiling at him. "It's much better, the swelling's gone down." Caleb watched her intently, the tight line of his mouth finally relaxing. "Good." They stood there talking in the living room, oblivious to my presence. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over me. This was how Caleb always seemed with her. Every word, every glance, radiating an intense affection, utterly unlike the distant politeness he usually showed me, or the hesitant warmth he had shown me recently. After they broke up, he'd worn a facade of moving on, pushing everyone away. Now, with their reunion, he could finally drop the pretense and openly show his deep-seated feelings, almost aggressively, letting Serafina know he wouldn't lose her again. A sharp, burning jealousy clawed at my insides. It reminded me of a time in college. Caleb was known for being aloof, handsome, and from a good family, but his distant demeanor made him unapproachable. I got to know him because we were lab partners. We were always busy, and Serafina, seeing me work late, would often bring me a thermos of soup. Slowly, she and Caleb started interacting, and the soup thermos expanded to 2 portions. After they got together, Serafina would playfully include me in their plans so I wouldn't feel left out. After I declined several times, she stopped asking. Once, working late in the lab, I somehow ended up joining them for dinner. Serafina and I were chatting, and I didn't notice Caleb ordered 3 bowls of scallion oil noodles. Serafina loved the noodles but hated scallions. She barely frowned, but Caleb, watching her every move, noticed. He pulled a tissue from the dispenser, laid it on the table, and painstakingly, one by one, picked every single scallion from her bowl. He finished, then looked at Serafina, who was wide-eyed with surprise, his expression softening. He smiled. "You can eat it now." Serafina had blushed, whispering to me, "Alara, isn't Caleb the sweetest?" I hadn't replied, just stared at the bowl of noodles before Serafina, feeling a strange sense of displacement. After that, he'd often ask me privately about Serafina's preferences, and I would tell him everything, diligently playing the role of the helpful assistant, but I never went out with them again. My thoughts snapped back to the present. I pulled my hand free, suppressing the ache in my chest, and walked towards the utility room. I packed Pipkin's essentials, his food, toys, bed. Lifting him from the sofa, careful not to look at Caleb throughout the entire process. Passing Serafina again, I paused, forcing a faint smile. "Caleb isn't inherently thoughtful," I said softly, the words feeling heavier than they sounded. "Only when it comes to you." The walk home was a blur of rain, but thankfully, I lived only about 15 minutes away from Caleb's building. After a shower and getting Pipkin settled after his own bath, it was almost 10. Serafina sent a message. "Alara, I truly didn't come back here intending to take Caleb from you." I debated, then replied, "But you slept with him last night, didn't you?" No reply came. Staring at my phone screen as it threatened to go dark, things clicked into place, connecting seemingly unrelated events. Just a few days ago, my best friend was in town for work, and Caleb and I took her to dinner. As we waited for the food, my friend's eyes darted between me and Caleb, a teasing look in her eyes. I felt a blush rise. Caleb, unfazed, casually reached for my hand, enclosing it in his thumb gently stroking my skin. It felt like an acknowledgement, a quiet declaration. The warmth spread through me. My entire being felt light and effervescent. When the food arrived, my friend told the waiter she'd accidentally ordered something with scallions. Her friend was allergic, and asked if she could change it. She glanced at me meaningfully. I froze for a moment, then met Caleb's eyes across the table. I saw a flicker of surprise there, momentary lapse in his usual composure. I looked down, feeling utterly exposed and foolish. How little he must truly know or care about me. How could he spend so much time with me and not realize I too hated scallions just like Serafina? I should have known then that I was never truly seen. Lost in thought, I opened my laptop to search for a new apartment. 6 months ago, when my job brought me to this city, I knew no one but Caleb. He'd helped me find this place, saying it was his younger maternal uncle's empty apartment. His uncle was Reese Beaumont, a few years older than Caleb, with degrees from prestigious universities in finance and business management. I'd met him once briefly at Caleb's birthday party, the same night I'd tried and failed to confess to Caleb. Amidst the awkwardness and pitying glances, only Reese, in a quiet corner, had offered a genuinely kind smile. Thinking little of it then, I'd taken the place, gotten Reese's contact from Caleb, and diligently paid rent at market rate each month. Beyond that, there had been no contact. I stared at listings of apartments, my head started to ache, a heavy fogginess settling in. I rubbed my temples, my vision blurring. Giving up, I closed the laptop and collapsed onto the sofa, utterly drained. The rain must have gotten to me. Drifting in and out of consciousness, I felt a presence nearby. Then a cool touch on my forehead. When I next woke, I was in my bed, the room bright with morning light. The fever seemed to have broken, my mind clear but heavy. I stared at the ceiling for a moment, pulled my phone from the bedside table. Dozens of messages and missed calls flooded in from colleagues, my best friend, real estate agents. Even Serafina had sent a sorry last night. But nothing from Caleb. Forcing the thoughts away, I got out of bed and headed to the bathroom. Heading downstairs, I saw a tall, familiar figure in the kitchen. A pot bubbled on the stove, steam rising, filling the air with a savory smell. A cooking tutorial for seafood congee played from a phone on the counter. He stood stiffly, looking utterly lost. After a moment, he started to move, following the instructions awkwardly. I noticed that when the vlogger mentioned adding scallions, he skipped the step, seemingly oblivious. He finally realized I was watching, turning slowly to meet my gaze. "Alara." I finally recognized him, Reese. Reese smoothly turned off his phone, a faint smile on his lips. "You're just recovering from a fever. You should eat something light. Go sit on the sofa. The congee will be ready soon." I nodded instinctively, murmuring, "Okay." As I turned, he called out, "Oh, there's something I need to discuss with you." I paused, tilting my head. My company has a new project here, so I'll be staying for a while," he explained, softening his tone. I meant to tell you I was coming back last night, but things were a bit rushed. Sorry. Looking into his eyes, I recalled flashes of last night, him lifting me from the sofa, carrying me to my bed, giving me water and medicine, staying with me, almost guarding me through the night. Complex feelings stirred within me. Other than that one brief meeting, Caleb had rarely mentioned his uncle, only in passing. I hadn't expected him to be so attentive. Seeing my silence, Reese's expression shifted slightly. His hand slipped into his pocket, the other resting naturally at his side. Does my staying here inconvenience you? He smiled gently. If it's a problem, I can find somewhere else. I blinked. Remembering I planned to move soon anyway, I said, It's your apartment. It's fine. Reese was still in the kitchen. Waiting, I scrolled through social media. Serafina's latest post was the first thing I saw. A photo taken at a cinema. A man in casual black clothing was visible, head slightly bowed, only half his face showing. But I recognized Caleb instantly. The movie was the one he'd stood me up for. Serafina had captured the final caption on screen. For the lovers. A brutal, perfect irony. Without thinking, I opened my chat with Caleb. My cursor blinked in the empty message field. I felt I had no right to demand an explanation. Suddenly, Caleb is typing. Peered. My heart leaped into my throat. A message arrived quickly. Pipkin still has some things here. When can you come get them? It was like a bucket of ice water. The last lingering warmth, the last flicker of pathetic hope, died. I managed a thin smile, wondering what I'd possibly been expecting. As I was about to reply, Reese emerged from the kitchen, carrying a black ceramic pot. The congee is ready. Come taste. I instinctively turned off my phone. Reese served me a bowl. You saw, he said matter-of-factly. This is my first time making seafood congee. It might not be perfect. Tell me honestly, if anything isn't right, I'll do better next time. Next time? My spoon hovered over the steaming bowl for a few seconds. I took a bite, looked up, and gave him a genuine smile. It's really good. He smiled back faintly. I thought so too. Later, Reese took a call. He had to return to the office for a while. He said he'd probably be back late and told me not to wait up for him for dinner. After he left, I thought about his words about next time, but quickly told myself not to read too much into them. After the congee, my mother called. She assumed I was heartbroken over Caleb and spoke gently, careful not to upset me. I tried to reassure her I was fine, that I was moving on, but she didn't believe me. She even suggested setting me up with someone. I sighed, about to refuse, but she hung up and immediately sent me a contact card. It looked familiar. Very familiar. I stared at the name. Reese Beaumont. I sent a screenshot of my mother's message to Reese. He was silent for 10 minutes. Me. Care to explain? Typing bubble appeared. Me. ? Reese typed slowly. How about I come back and tell you in person? I agreed. Reese returned around 6 in the evening. He seemed calm, his expression open, meeting my gaze with a faint smile. Have you eaten? I asked. He sighed dramatically, sounding slightly put upon. Too busy. Didn't eat all day. I frowned and headed towards the kitchen. I'll make you some simple noodles. He grabbed my wrist, pulling me closer. I was kidding, he said, his eyes warm. I ate. My face flushed at the sudden closeness. Anyway. I quickly changed the subject. How do you know my mother? He thought for a moment. Probably when I was very young, he said, a distant look in his eyes. I looked at him suspiciously. Reese smiled. Actually, you knew me a long time ago too. Seeing my baffled look, Reese gently rubbed my palm and finally told me. Our families lived close by when we were kids. My mother and yours were high school friends, so we saw each other often. He smiled fondly. I remember you. Well, because my mother often asked me to take you out to play. He paused. Once I wasn't paying attention to the time, and it got dark before we got back. You were gripping my hand so tightly, trembling a little, but you were stubborn, didn't make a sound even though you were clearly about to cry. That's when I learned you were afraid of the dark. My heart clenched. I had faint memories of a very close neighbor from when I was very young, but the details were hazy. Then we moved and the families lost touch. Until a year ago, when our mothers reconnected at a high school reunion. He shrugged lightly. Somehow my mother gave yours my WeChat. Auntie would sometimes post your pictures or mention you when we chatted. Looking back, I guess she was trying to set us up. Finally, Reese looked into my eyes, his voice low and serious. Alara, Caleb was right last night. I've had feelings for you for a long time. I stared at him, something stirring inside me, breaking through the surface of my carefully constructed calm. Before I could react, Reese's arm went around my waist, his thumb tracing lazy circles against my skin. His breath was warm against my ear, carrying a hint of wine from earlier. I knew my ears were burning bright red. I froze, my body stiff. Then I heard him speak, his voice a low murmur. Alara, don't move out, okay? A jolt went through me, my skin tingling, my heart racing, almost bursting from my chest. I clutched his shirt, lost for words. Just then the phone rang. Serafina. The moment shattered. Serafina called, tearfully explaining Caleb had come back in the rain, drunk all night, and now had a fever and stomach pain. He wouldn't take medicine, just kept calling my name. Alara. Her voice was a strained whisper, hoarse with exhaustion and tears. I don't know what else to do. Can you come see him? I looked at Reese. He held my hand. I'll go with you. When we reached Caleb's apartment building, Reese didn't come in. Talk it over, he said gently. I looked at him. I won't be long. He smiled. Okay. I went inside and found Caleb in his bedroom. He looked utterly worn out, his lips pale, sweat beading on his forehead, making his face appear even weaker and more vulnerable. Why won't you take your medicine? I asked softly. He was silent for a moment, then his voice came rough and strained. I'm sorry. I just watched him, saying nothing. What I said last night was terrible. I'm sorry. Okay, I said quietly. I accept your apology. Please take your medicine. Serafina is worried about you. What about you? He looked at me directly, his eyes searching mine. Are you worried about me? I sighed, turning to leave. I'm going now. Alara, he called out. He spoke slowly, heavily. I used to think I loved Serafina, but now I realize it was just youthful pride, a refusal to let go of the past. His voice was barely a whisper, raw with emotion. All this time it was you who was there for me. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a raw, desperate emotion. Alara, I love you. My heart felt strangely calm, detached. But I don't love you anymore, I replied, my voice steady, quiet, devoid of the turmoil I'd felt for so long. Caleb, no one waits forever. I hadn't realized Serafina was standing just outside the bedroom door. Her face was pale, her expression drawn and weary, her eyes swollen from crying. She must have heard everything. Alara. Her voice was hoarse, raspy with exhaustion and tears. In the end you won. I just looked at her, unable to speak. Serafina lowered her gaze. After Caleb came back last night, he just sat there drinking, silent, glass after glass. I couldn't get him to stop. She paused, her lips twisting into a bitter, self-mocking smile. Then I tried to help him to bed, and he just shoved me away. I'll never forget the look in his eyes, pure rejection, devoid of any affection. Do you know what he said to me? She took a shaky breath. His eyes were bloodshot, and he said that's how it happened that night, and he couldn't make the same mistake again, because you would leave him. A week passed quickly. Serafina moved out of Caleb's place, and Caleb didn't come looking for me again. But sometimes when Reese and I were coming back from getting groceries, we'd happen to see him in the neighborhood park, the one we always passed. Was it a coincidence? I didn't care to analyze it anymore. On Friday, Reese said it wasn't good to stay cooped up and wanted to take me out for some exercise. When we got there, I discovered exercise meant bungee jumping. I looked at him, understanding instantly what he was doing, helping me face my fears, leap into the unknown. The instructors secured our gear. Scared? Reese asked, his smile gentle. I smiled back. No. Stepping off the platform, my mind went utterly blank, the rush of adrenaline overwhelming everything. My heart seemed to stop. All the people I thought were important, all the attachments I thought I'd never let go of, vanished in the rush of wind and my own cry. The only thing sharp and clear in my mind was Reese's encouraging, gentle smile just before I jumped. It was 9 by the time we got back. After showering, I lay in bed and called the real estate agent. I wasn't moving. I told him to keep the deposit as compensation. Then I messaged Reese, letting him know. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it. Reese stood there quiet, just looking at me. His hair and eyes were slightly damp, as if he'd just showered. After a moment his throat worked. "Have you thought about it?" he asked, his voice low slightly. "Horse." I looked at him, knowing he meant my answer to his question about us. "Yes," I said softly. "I have." "And Caleb?" he asked quietly, his gaze searching. My answer was certain, unwavering. "There's nothing between us now, and there won't be in the future." He smiled faintly, then seemed to recall something, his expression becoming serious. "Well, I suppose that won't quite do." I blinked. Then the meaning registered and I laughed softly, warmth blooming in my chest. Okay, being his aunt-in-law, maybe that was okay too.